Yeah, I can see your screen, Matteo.
Okay, cool. All right, cool. Yeah, so for my presentation today, I decided to talk about the chapter work in the book 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. And it's by an author called Yuval Harari. You may have come across his books before, so he's also the author of Homo Deus and Homo Sapiens. And I've decided to talk about this topic because I think for me, it's personally quite interesting, but also I think for all of us here on this call, for all of us, career-minded individuals, I think the topics which are touched upon in this chapter can be relevant for us all. So I've named this, I've branded it Keeping Up with Our Own Advancement. And I guess you guys will understand why I've chosen this brand. So starting off then, I'll just give the general notion, the general feeling that the author gives us. So there seems to be a war, let's say, between humans and between technology when it comes to jobs, when it comes to automation. He doesn't refer it personally to a war, but from reading it, the reader gets the sense that we are increasingly at odds with technology. And as part of this war, there's two different battles. There's a physical battle and the cognitive battle. So what you can see here on the screen isn't directly from the book. So I've also gathered some other things which I've read which relate. So this is from a reading I came across during my studies. And so we've seen 4 industrial revolutions. We've seen 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, and we're currently within 4.0. As what we've historically seen, according to the author, is that on the physical side, we've historically lost to technology. Without a doubt, repetitive processes have been replaced with technology. So we've historically, and we currently still have, a big advantage on the cognitive side when comparing ourselves to technology, because, technology can do many things. However, it can't think the way we think. It can't communicate the way we communicate. It's not as creative as the way we're creative. It can't make the decisions that we make on a daily basis. However, increasingly, it seems that technology is entering the cognitive arena, let's say, and it's increasingly taken away more cognitive tasks. And this is a bit of an issue because this is generally an area where us humans have historically had quite an advantage on, and now we're seeing technology entering this field and kind of creeping up upon us, lurking around and taking away more cognitive tasks. And this is relevant for Industry 4.0. Whereas before, in the previous industrial revolutions, we were replaced on the physical side, but it was okay because we could always rely on the cognitive side. But now we're increasingly at odds with technology when it comes to the cognition side of things. So when we talk about cognition, what we're really talking about is biotechnology. So the author sees that advances in biotechnology can allow us to feed this information to technology in order for it to be much more efficient. So when we make decisions on a daily basis, the author refers to this as us having some sort of biochemical algorithm within our brain. So when we make decisions, we are unconsciously using billions of neurons within our brain that calculate the probability of a particular course of action and the impact of that course of action. So we are unconsciously making these decisions on a daily basis driven by billions of neurons. And these biochemical algorithms can be reflected from the biochemical patterns we see on a daily basis. So things like facial expressions, tones of voice, hand movements, these kind of things reflect in a way the biochemical processes which are occurring within our brain and within our human bodies. Now, the issue is that as scientists learn more about the human brain and about the human body, this information can be fed to technology to allow technology to be, let's say, a bit smarter and to actually start, in a way, thinking like humans and being able to make decisions. And, we're already seeing this when it comes to analysis. We can see that technology in terms of its analytical power is way more superior than humans already, but we may start to see more and more cognitive tasks being carried out by technology. So when it comes to things like predicting the intentions of a pedestrian or assessing the credibility of a borrower, these are things that the author sees technology being able to do and being able to do at a much more efficient way, let's say. So when it comes to cognition and, the cognition battle between humans and technology, this is about biotech, and our own advances in biotech can allow technology to be more powerful, but potentially, therefore, take more jobs away from humans. So on the one side, we've got competition. On the other side, we've got cooperation, though. So there's also lots of positives which come about with automation and technology and advances that we're seeing within industry. So one main advantage is job and time creation. So we know, for example, if we look at US Army drones, the author was explaining that for every group of drones which flies across Iraq or Syria, you probably have a team of people involved in the creation, the maintenance, and the deployment of that drone. So you have jobs created in other fields thanks to the development of a particular technology, in this case, US drones. Then there's also the idea of time creation. So if we look at Amazon Go, and the way, you can now go into an Amazon store in some of them in the US and not have to use a cashier to pay. Everything is tracked. You can walk in, walk out, and the payment will be taken from you without having to use a cashier, as you usually use in a supermarket. So this has, apart from the fact that it does create a lot of new jobs as well, it also creates this idea of time creation. So the fact that if I'm a cashier and my job is taken away, I can then go and focus on another area of the store. So I can focus more on more strategic tasks and less on the repetitive. So actually what we see is that technology takes a weight off our shoulders, and we're able to focus more on things which add more value. And we're able to, spend less time on repetitive type jobs. And this is a big advantage. However, the author then talks about the problems about this when it comes to Industry 4.0, which is that there is, in a way, a career transition problem. So whereas in previous industrial revolutions, as you saw in my previous slide, people could go from one type of job to another fairly easily if they were replaced by technology. They could, for example, in 1920, if a farm worker was laid off, they could potentially go in a factory producing the tractors which replaced him or her in the first place, right? Or in 1980, a factory worker, an unemployed factory worker who was replaced by automation could go and work as a cashier, for example, in a supermarket, because the level of education needed is more or less the same, right? You might not see what's written under here, but if we look at cashiers in Amazon Go, for example, so yes, I've just said that, they could potentially go and focus on other activities, but what if we get to a situation where other aspects of the supermarket, for example, are automated? We may get to a situation where the business takes a decision that actually is much more efficient to have less humans. It's much more cost effective to rely on technology. So therefore, if I'm a cashier and my job is replaced by automation, if we think about it simply, in a very simple form, I'm actually being replaced by roles such as data analysts, data scientists, software engineers. These are the roles which are created as a result of something like Amazon Go. So the transition from being a cashier to being a software engineer or a data scientist is quite a big transition, and it's not an easy transition to make. Mainly because obviously, you're required to have a high level of education to enter those type of fields. Please let me know if you're having any issues listening or anything like that. So when we're talking about the creation of the so-called useless class, the author does talk about potential solutions. So in the short term, he talks about regulation and about finance. So he talks about slowing down the pace of regulation. Slowing down the pace of change through regulation, which may seem as as something which is trying to stop progress, may be seen as quite negative. But I think in the short term, we may need regulation to slow down the pace of change in order to help countries adapt and prepare for the future. Then he talks about safety nets as well. So the fact that so if you're an employee and you're replaced by automation technology, you may need some financial support during that transition period. During that period where you're trying to upskill, you may need some financial support. So there has to be some sort of safety net for these people who find themselves in this situation. The author then talks about, these transition periods are essentially periods of reinvention, of career reinvention. So if I'm being replaced by technology, I need to upskill and I need to kind of think, where am I going to go now? What kind of jobs can I do? What kind of industries can I go in? And that requires, in a way, you to reinvent you as a worker, you reinvent your career, your CV, etc. But reinvention isn't easy. So, you might be able to reinvent once or twice in your lifetime, but it becomes mentally taxing. And this is something that the author mentions. We can't, it's not very easy to totally change careers and to go from a cashier to, a software engineer, for example. That change is quite a big leap. So we may need some long-term solutions as well. So he talks about universal basic income and potentially taxing, let's say, the tech owners, taxing those who have that technology, who are producing more and who are producing a lot of wealth for themselves. We may potentially need to tax those guys, let's say, and spread their wealth to people who have been left out. And there's also universal basic services. So this is, in a way, subsidizing the services we need, so making things cheaper. So these are two examples of how we could potentially deal with this issue. However, here comes another problem that the author mentions. And this issue is to do with wealth distribution. So, we already know that in the capitalist system, one of the disadvantages is that there's a lot of social inequality. And we know that roughly 80 to 90% of the world's wealth is within about 10 to 20% of the world's population. So if we start to see technology taking over more jobs, producing more of what was previously produced by humans, we can see that more wealth will be within those companies who own this technology. The problem is that these companies tend to be in more developed nations. And, the first thing that comes into our heads when we think about this is probably the US, California, and Silicon Valley, for example. So let's go to a point where, say, for example, if we assume that capitalism will be able to continue producing, let's say, the miracles it's done until today. So what I mean by that is the ability to mass produce, to achieve economies of scale, to, make things cheaper for everyone generally. If we're able to do that with 3D printing, for example, we may get to a situation, the author mentions, where, in 2030, I may go to, Zara or H&M, if they still exist, and print off some clothing in the store, wait 10 minutes, get some clothes printed off for me, and that's that. So for those countries who rely on cheap labor and who may not have natural resources that act as a buffer, what are they going to do when we get to that situation? How are they going to keep up? And that's a fundamental issue which the author brings to light due to, automation and technology, etc. So the last slide then, to summarize this presentation, I thought to create a bit of a meme, as in, we all love a good meme. And if the way I see things is, let's pretend that blonde woman there is me, or that blonde woman there is us as individuals, us as humans, us as a civilization. Let's imagine that hamster there as technology or, algorithms. We may get to a stage where we're having to keep up. We're having to go faster and faster to stay up to date with the changes in technology. And so what we're seeing here, as you can probably notice in the picture, there's a shift of authority. So whereas usually the hamster would be the guy running in the wheel, and the blonde lady would be determining the speed that hamster is running at. But what we're seeing here potentially is a shift of authority from humans to technology. So we are potentially, the way the author talks about this, going to be at the mercy, perhaps, in some shape or form, to technology. And so this is a fundamental issue. And this picture, by the way, isn't from the book. I found it on the internet, so I got quite lucky because it kind of fits in well with what I'm talking about. And in fact, the author then says, at the end, he says, we should worry about the shift of authority from humans to algorithms. And this is what we're kind of seeing potentially. So in terms of my own personal reflections to finish off, so this is why I've titled and keeping up with our own advancement, because from the way I see it, these developments in technology are forcing us to have to stay up to date more regularly, forcing us to learn more regularly, and therefore we're trying to keep up with our own advancement, and that's quite significant. We're trying to keep up with the pace of the innovation that we ourselves have created. So number one of the questions which springs to mind for me is, are we at risk of being the victims of our own success? So, what sections of the population, what countries are going to be the winners, who are going to be the losers? Because we know that with every transformation, with every crisis, there's always a winner and there's always a loser. And so I think with this transformation that we're seeing in terms of automation and jobs and new industries and jobs being taken away, new jobs being added, there's going to be winners and there's going to be losers. And the fundamental question will be, how are we going to keep the potential losers engaged? How are we going to help them out? How are we going to keep them relevant in the 21st century? Number three is, personally, I think in order to approach this issue, we need to focus a lot on lifelong learning. So, back in the day, it was, you go to school, you go to university, you get your degree, and that's the learning that you've done, and that's it. You don't have to learn anything more, more or less. But I think nowadays we have to get used to the notion that that isn't enough, that after someone graduates, they have to continuously upskill to stay relevant. So they have to continuously, let's say, run in order to keep up with their own advancement. So what what the blonde woman there is doing on the wheel. And I think, therefore, we need a fundamental change also to our education systems, because I don't think they're keeping up. They're not up to date with whatever that's going on in the world. So I'll show you a quote that I came across in a peer-reviewed journal that I read during my thesis at university. And this perfectly encapsulates this issue that education is also struggling to keep up with their own advancement. So as you can see there, nearly 50% of acquired subject knowledge during the first year of a 4-year technical degree is outdated by the time students graduate, according to one popular estimate. So obviously, we don't know how these guys collected their data. We don't know the validity of this data. However, it's being mentioned in, the report, The Future of Jobs, Employment, the Fourth Industrial Revolution. So it seems like a reliable source. But anyway, let's say that this is more or less potentially a risk. This really reflects the pace of change and the fact that education needs to keep up. And I think this will be the main area to kind of focus on in order to make sure that we're keeping up, we're upskilling, that we have a workforce which has the skills necessary to enter this digital transformation that we're seeing across society. And therefore, the last point I'll finish off with is simply, I think, my personal opinion, I tend to be quite a positive guy. I think we will adapt as a human civilization. We've come across many different challenges in history. We're coming across a challenge now. And I think personally, we will be able to adapt. And therefore, this basically ends my presentation, really. So thanks for listening. And
yes, Matteo, thank you so much.
No worries.
The last point was incredible.
Nice and simple, yeah.
Clear. So I saw just a question of Nas, and also for everyone that want to make a question for Matteo, is a moment. We're able to answer to all of your questions.
Okay, so is Nas the first question?
Yeah.
Nas, yeah, okay, nice one, Nas, from Dubai, straight from Dubai.
I see also Pietro.
Oh, Pietro as well from Milan, love that.
Yeah. So, Matteo, let's start from Nas.
Okay, here we go.
Nas said that if we start regulation innovation, won't that up driving people to start innovating as as much as there would be a known blocker down the road. Like if business knew we would all be able to sell book online and not be able to expand, would we even start Amazon?
Wait, sorry. You went through that kind of fast. You cut out a little bit as well. What was the first part of that?
Let's unmute Nas in this way.
Okay. Let's unmute Let's unmute him. Let's get him involved. Let's throw him in there.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Nas.
Amazing. So my question was on that slide. You had a pointer that said we can if we go back. So solutions for the useless class. Okay, so short run, regulating the way we are seeing technology advancement. So for example, if innovators know that there's going to be a blocker, or they know that their legs are going to be cut off, or at least for a certain period of time, would they be as motivated to then keep innovating? So for example, if you go to Tesco, nowadays, not many people go, or to any supermarket, you wouldn't go to the cashier, right? You'd go to the automatic one and just swipe your stuff and leave. If you knew you could only use that 30% of the times in the beginning, and the other 70% you'd have to go to the cashier, would you become so used to using the technology and therefore allowing the company to keep investing in that technology and scaling it?
So you've definitely got a point. So the author talks about potentially the need to slow down the regulation. I kind of agree with what you're saying. I mean, I don't know how possible that will be, because we live in a capitalist system, we live in a free market economy, the so-called laissez-faire economy, where we like to use the so-called invisible hand, and therefore I think regulation will be problematic because we don't like to be regulated too much in the West. We like a bit of market freedom. And so definitely, you definitely have a point, because regulation might put off some people from innovating. Regulation might put off people from some companies from, creating new jobs and creating employment. So that's definitely a fair and valid point. And I think it will be, an area to kind of further discover in the future, really. But no, I totally get you, and I kind of do agree with you there. So I'll decide to put the blame on the author.
and same with the next point in that. I think if you click.
I
think medium term, long run. It says that tax the tech owners and spread their wealth. I think the majority of us, or the majority of younger people, would agree that taxing the higher class, so the multi-millionaires and billionaires would be fair in a more proportionate rate. But if we say these people can only attain a certain amount of wealth, out of which, if they hit, let's say, $50 billion, the wealth is removed and distributed to fund other stuff, then would there be such an incentive to keep striving to push barriers and to break conventional ways of working and to keep innovating? Will there be
I think depends on the way you look at it. So you're looking at it from the tech owners. I think you're thinking the actual owner, the guy who owns the company, right? Is that where you're coming from?
The person who owns and the investors and all the people in the
I think the author was more coming from the angle of, as in owners. What they mean by owners, I think, is the actual company. So let's imagine, you work for Amazon in Dubai, right? So let's imagine that Amazon comes up with this new product which, does all kind of miracles and creates a lot of wealth and is very productive and gives Amazon a lot of revenue. I think the idea is to tax these kind of companies slightly more, so to tax their revenue slightly more than the average. So to tax that wealth or that revenue which is created from advancements in technology, and use that taxation to invest in areas such as providing people safety nets or subsidizing education or whatever it is. So I think the author's coming at it from a corporate perspective, so taxing the corporate company, the entity, rather than the actual owner.
Cool. That was a really good presentation, Matteo. Well done.
Thanks, man. Thanks for joining, bro.
Thank you so much, Matteo.
No worries.
Thank you, Nas. I think that we can follow now the schedule because we are a little bit late. So I will introduce Ina and the next topic. Okay. All the question for Matteo, the further question we can do in LinkedIn. So we have a lot of channel to follow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
We can connect on LinkedIn. Let's all add each other. Let's all connect. And
yeah, for sure. For sure.
Okay. So hello everyone. I'm Nina. I'm trying to share my screen with you. Here we are. So yes. Today, can you hear me properly and you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So today I will talk to you about quite a hot topic right now, which is sanitizing. We have, all of us, I guess, that you have been doing that every day during the latest weeks. So I thought that it was interesting for you to know something about the chemical side of this. Here you have an overview of what we will be seeing now. So to start, first of all, if I miss any technical words and you think that is key to explain and I don't explain it, please stop me and I can explain. So here you can see the coronavirus. I'm sure you have seen this picture a lot of times these weeks. What is it made of? So it consists of these spike proteins. Oh wait, I will show my arrow. No, you don't see my arrow now. Well, you don't see my arrow anyway.
Yes.
Hey, you see it?
Yeah, for a moment. Yeah, but don't worry. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so this is the spike glycoprotein, and this is the one that gives the name of corona, which means crown in most of our languages. And this is the one that actually first helps the virus to enter into our bodies by reacting with some of our proteins. Then what we have inside is the RNA, which is the genetic material of the virus. And finally, what is very interesting for the sanitizing purpose is that it is composed by an envelope, the red part. And this envelope is, it's called as well the lipidic bilayer. What does it mean? So a lipid is a molecule that is formed by a water-soluble head. That means that it likes water. And it has tails that are oil-soluble. In this lipidic bilayer, as you can see, there is all the water-soluble heads are in the external part of the envelope. And in the inside, we have all the oil-soluble parts. Now, here, why is it important? So here I will explain you 4 ways to destroy the coronavirus. Soap. Let's start with soap. I forgot to charge the video. I will put it now. So soap is also made of molecules that have water-like head and an oil-like tail, as you can see in this slide. Hold on a second. I will now charge a video so you can see the action of soap. Basically, what soap is able to do is that, well, the lipophilic tail is able to enter in the envelope, and it can break the envelope, and then the genetic material gets out of the virus. Can you see it?
Soap molecules have a hydrophilic head which is attracted to water and a hydrophobic tail that seeks to bond with lipids such as oils and fats. Coronaviruses are enveloped RNA viruses. Their key components are RNA, the virus's genetic material, proteins that allow the virus to infect cells, and a lipid envelope that coats the virus. This lipid membrane has 2 rings of hydrophilic heads surrounding 2 layers of hydrophobic tails. Soap molecules destabilize a coronavirus because their hydrophobic tails are attracted to lipids in the virus's lipid bilayer. The soap molecules stick to lipids in the bilayer and pry them apart, encapsulating them in bubbles called micelles that wash away in the lather. In addition to disrupting the lipid membrane of the virus, soap molecules also disrupt the bonds that hold the proteins, lipids, and they effectively pull the virus apart, and the viral particles are rinsed away in water.
Good. So this is the mechanism of action of soap in the in sanitizing and the infecting processes. Then we can follow with alcohol and as a hand sanitizer, as it is in the gels, for example. So actually alcohol acts in a very similar way than soap. It can dissolve the lipids of the envelope. So you can imagine a very similar way of action. Both soap and alcohol, as you can see, are recommended to use both in hands and hard surfaces. While now we can see that there is bleach. On the right, we can see bleach and nitrogen peroxide, which are, so bleach is one of a very used cleaning product at home. They are both not recommended to use in our hands because they are very harsh. And they both work by denaturalizing the proteins that are in the envelope. We saw some proteins, so they are breaking them, so the envelope breaks, and then they are able as well to denaturalize the genetic material inside of the coronavirus. So now, having seen the most chemical part, we can go a bit to the history of hand sanitizer. First cosmetic product in the market with alcohol was actually not a hand sanitizer, but was a hand cleanser. It had only 5% alcohol. It was a non-rinse off hand cleanser made by the brand Gojo. 20 years later, Sterilium, which I guess you know, you can see the picture here of the product, launched a 75% alcohol solution in glycerin, which was a liquid product. And 1 year later, there is this legend of a nursing student from California called Lupe Hernandez, that there is this legend that says that she had this idea of carrying alcohol in a gel in order to provide more easy to use sanitizing processes in hospitals rather than watery alcohol solutions that are a bit messy to use. But there is no official patent on this, there is no official documentation, so this is kept only as a legend. And it's only in 1988 when Purell invented the 70% ethyl alcohol solution gel that goes to market in 1997, quite some years later. So now a little bit of formulation of the hand sanitizers. What are they made of? Well, obviously, they are formulated, most of them with alcohol. There are different types of alcohol that we can use. They basically work the same way. As I explained you, they dissolve the lipidic envelope of the virus. And there is the Food and Drugs Administration and the World Health Organization that are have some guideline recommendations for the formulation of these hand sanitizers. Usually it's around the 70%, we can hear 60 to 95%. For hand sanitizers, honestly, it's usually more 70, 75, because 95, it's too harsh for our skin. Then in this poster, we can see other molecules that are used as well in non-alcohol hand sanitizers, but for coronavirus case and for the majority of viruses, it is recommended to use alcohol-based hand sanitizers rather than not alcohol-based sanitizers. Those ones, the latest ones, are most efficient on bacteria. Then we can have as well the ingredient glycerin, which will help us on the hydration of our skin. I would like to highlight that the most common formats in hand sanitizer are liquid, gel, and foam. I will explain you why. And then other additives that can be added into the hand sanitizers are vitamin E, that is a great antioxidant, aloe vera, panthenol, that help on the moisturization of our skin, as these products can be super harsh for our hands, fragrance, and for the gel format ones, obviously there may be some polymers to build up on viscosity. So now some numbers. So this is a graph showing the behavior regarding the infecting habits of US population. We can see, obviously, as expected, everybody's every week more and more, cleaning more, the infecting more, everything. Then, as per Google Trend Analytics, there has been a 300% times increase in hand washing search terms in Google in the past 3 months. Not only in the word hand washing, but as well, this is funny, but as well songs for hand wash, technique for hand wash, etc. It has become an interesting topic for everyone. And as well, searches for hand creams have increased by 3 to 4 times. Why? Because, well, as you may have noticed in your hands, or maybe not if you are very lucky, but those products, both hand sanitizers, and only by cleaning your hands a lot, you are removing a lot of lipids that we have in our skin, and thus our hands get super dry. Then here we have, we can see, these are statistics before the COVID-19 pandemic. There was already an expected growth on the hand sanitizer market. Okay, we can see it's growing quite importantly. Consumer is aware of viruses, of how that there is a need to be careful on that. But actually, while it was expected in this image, if you can see my mouse, the expected growth was 1.7 billion until 2015. And after during this pandemic, this has changed, and now there is a 12 billion expected growth during the following 4 years. The demand for hand sanitizers has increased a lot, from exactly 1,400% during the last month. Companies are producing 16 times more hand sanitizer than before, and obviously increase of demand, increase of price. Price has increased by almost 70%. Talking about this increase of production, well, first of all, here you can see the major players, major producers for hand sanitizers, the brands that obviously are taking most benefit of this crisis. Reckitt Benckiser, 3M, Unilever, Gojo, that if you remember was the one of the first one to invent the hand sanitizers, and Bath & Body. And then, as there has been a very big growth of the demand of hand sanitizers, not only cosmetic and pharma manufacturing places have done a lot of work, but as well, food industries have had the need to adapt to this situation. And for instance, there was this company called Vodka 14 Incas, who was usually producing vodka, and instead they adapted their systems, and they started to create alcohol in order to be able to produce hand sanitizers. Here, just a quick overview of some different sanitizing inventions that were actually from 2013, so 7 years ago. It's not a new trend, but it's nice to see that if needed, some like supermarkets could adapt this sanitizing for cart handles tool. Then there is as well this UV light transmitter that is able to sterilize phones, to sterilize keyboards. And then on the left, this machine that is creating disinfecting bubbles when children or whoever puts the hand of them, so it's more likely that children will keep washing their hands and infecting their hands. So that's all from my side. If you have any questions, comments.
Thank you, Nina. I have, as you mentioned, there's a lot of change in the market of sanitizer, and also the fact that new players come inside as the market grows as opportunity, but also as they must change with different production. How it's difficult for a manufacturing company that works in different market to go into the hand sanitizer market. So
you mean that work in the food field?
Yeah,
maybe?
yes, food or other market.
Okay, honestly, I have not done any research of that. I'm not very aware, but I mean, the process of creating alcohol and producing alcohol, they have it. They just need to adjust. I guess they can adjust their parameters, do some slight changes, and they can produce another grade of alcohol. Anyway, I don't think that they want to get ready to keep working on the cosmetics field. So I don't think that they are doing very big changes on their facilities.
Okay, thank you. I would say that Francesco also is typing, probably as a question for Nina. Yes.
I would
also
like
Danny
to
is
ask
typing.
something because it's maybe.
Yes, as the same question as me. The fact that.
Okay. No, I would like to ask. To add that my views on Donald Trump. This man is a phenomenon.
He refers. Sorry, I'm Nicolò. I think he refers to the comments that Trump did last week on the.
Yes.
On the infecting to eat it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's why I say that it's a phenomenon. I have no words. If you don't understand about the topic, he should leave doctors and people who really understand about the topic talk about it.
Yes, we got the point of
indeed.
Milani.
So bleach,
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm here an echo. I mean, bleach may only be used in surfaces. That's it. I even said not even on skin because it's super harsh, and it's known that if you drink it, it is really harmful.
It's not aloe vera, let's say.
No, indeed. If you want to drink aloe vera, you can.
yeah, in fact. We have a question from Ivan, I think.
No, I wanted to add, while Ivan is typing, that if you want to compare hand sanitizers and soap and water processes, it is really recommended while you are at home, and while you have the, you can, FDA and World Health Organization really recommend to use soap and water before then hand sanitizing. Sanitizing is a great option, but please use it when you cannot reach soap and water.
Why do you say that, Nina? It's because the alcohol.
So for
it's dangerous for the pH of the.
No, it's not because of that. It's not because of your skin. Your skin unlikely will be affected in both of the cases because both soap and alcohol are getting away oil and lipids from your skin, which will dehydrate it. But it is because with soap and water, you are rinsing off, you are really removing the rest of that virus that you have on your skin. So it's just better.
Okay.
If it's clear.
Nina, I see a question from Ivan, and probably Ivan, I will let you speak, so it's easier also to us. Okay, I give you the voice. Also, there's a question from Luca and Dani. Welcome, Ivan.
Hi there. I just wanted to ask, considering that there has been many, say, recall to the public on how you properly wash your hands, you should first with a part of your hand, then the fingers, and then you have to do it for 1 minute straight, otherwise it's not done properly. So I was wondering, how much can clean your hand in a bad way create an environment for the virus to survive? What is the risk of not doing that properly or with the proper products?
Okay, this is a great question. Actually, I didn't put it in the slides, but I saw some images. I don't know if I will find them right now. Some UV images that were showing the difference between washing your hands 5 seconds, 20 seconds, 40 seconds, and 60 seconds. I'm not able to tell you a percentage, but it's a very interesting question. If you want, I can send you the link so you can see the image.
Okay, so it changes anyhow. If
it really
did
changes.
an analysis, it changes. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Yes, we have a question from Francesco. How is expected to grow in this market justify also after the corona crisis? Yes. Probably, Nina, you show charts of the provision.
This one?
Yes.
So this one, actually, on the left, it was previous of the pandemic. Okay, so it was the forecast before the breakout of coronavirus. But yeah, here we see that that there is an exponential growth. Francesco, honestly, I am not an analysis woman, so I don't know. I was looking for some reports on the trends of this market, but I cannot answer to you very technically this question as I would like to.
Yes, I think with this point we can have also another session about it, and also the sanitizer in corporate. I think it can be a good topic.
I mean,
I see a question
I don't know
from Luca.
Simo, if you have more experience on this market trend, and maybe you could guess.
Yeah, for sure. Yes. Nina, I see a question from Luca. Can you see on chat?
Okay. Could you explain us how to sanitize surfaces, products, use and procedure? Okay. So
this is a really good point, I think.
Wait. I will show you. I will go back to this slide. So, but Luca is asking only for surfaces, right?
Yes.
Okay. So here it says clearly that it should be left on surfaces for at least 10 minutes, both bleach solutions and hydrogen peroxide. And yeah, that's the point. Just in order not to move it to one place to another, we need to really wet the surface with the bleach, whatever the infecting solution that we have, to let it act on the virus, to let it denaturate the proteins, to let it kill, dissolve the lipid bilayer. And after that, after this 10 minutes, we can remove with a cloth. Because if not, yeah, you're totally right, Luca, we will be just moving it from one cupboard to another or one table to another.
Okay, I think that the topic is really interesting, and also David, I saw a question from his side. He was typing. David is correct. I will open you the microphone so we can do faster. Davide. Hi, Davide. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can.
Welcome.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Hi. No, I just have only one quick question, because when I was working in a lab, we used acetone to sanitize every surface, and it was very cheap. And I wanted to ask you if it might be something to use to sanitize surfaces instead of other products. I don't know if you...
I have never heard about, well, I mean, it is a solvent, harsh solvent, so it can for sure, solve the lipidic envelope. But I have not seen any recommendations, neither from FDA, neither from WHO. And, well, me personally in the lab, we are using 70% alcohol solution to disinfect. So.
Okay. No, I mean, it's just, it might be an alternative.
No, but it's interesting. I will look for more information about it.
Davide, can be a cheaper solution from Italian lab, I think.
Wait, but yeah, indeed, I don't know what is cheaper. Is it cheaper acetone than ethanol? I have no idea, honestly.
We will check for sure.
Yeah.
And that's another question. Let's do the last one.
Can I ask a question to Davide? In which kind of lab are you working?
Yeah, I was working in a biochemistry lab.
Okay.
But when I was working in a biological lab, yeah, we used mostly ethanol. So maybe ethanol is just to clean everything away.
I don't know. I will check really.
And ethanol is better for molecules like this. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll check. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Davide. Can we say that we are working on the same lab now, Davide? So we go to Luca. Luca, I will open the voice, so we can have the last question from Luca, and then all the question for this topic. I will say that we can ask by chat or other source. Luca, can you hear us?
Well, but I can read his question otherwise. How to become objects bought inside supermarket? So there are some. Okay, I would say, I don't know. I'm just trying not to get very obsessed with this topic. I know that we have to be very careful. This is true. But at some point with my shopping from supermarket, I am so like with vegetables that I may need to eat the peel. Maybe I wait for 24 hours to eat them, which is a good practice because virus, if they don't have a host cell, virus, well, there is an open discussion about that. But virus are not really considered live they are not considered to have a real life, because they can only reproduce themselves when they have a host cell. So, and it has to be a respiratory host cell. So if this virus is on an apple, he will not find a proper cell to get reproduced, so he will just die after several hours. So I think that it's good we can do that. Then for things like for pasta that have plastic packagings, in theory they are treating them with gloves in all the supermarkets, so we should not be very concerned about that. But I agree, it's a good practice. If you feel more comfortable, I encourage you to clean them with alcohol solutions before, just when you arrive home. And anyway, by doing that, with the clothes, maybe you remove the virus, you don't kill it, but if after you throw this tissue or whatever, the virus will go to the trash, so you should be on the safe side. I hope this is a bit clear.
Yeah, I hope we was able to give you some feedback and some suggestions to survive in this situation. Next time we will do for sure a new session and we will go deeply with this topic. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nina. And we will go with the last but not the least, our friend Nicolò. Nicolò, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, for sure.
I'm going to share the screen with you, guys.
Perfect.
Can you see the screen?
Yeah, it's loading.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. A bit and quick introduction of myself. Already was Simone introducing me a little bit. Nicolò Monchiero, friend of this beautiful chat webinar. And I'm 27. I'm a business intelligence manager for the FCA Group, Fiat Chrysler Automobile. But today I will speak as Nicolò Monchiero, not as an automotive manager, even though I'm using, of course, all my knowledge to collect the data, analyze the academic papers, the newspapers, the financial economic news about this very insightful and interesting topic of the subprime auto loans issue. The title is How Scary Are Subprime Auto Loans? So let's go with it. The agenda is I will try to introduce a little bit the topic, the definition of what is a subprime car loan. Then I will tell you what is the current situation in the United States. And finally, I will try to give you some conclusion based on my knowledge and on what I found in my research. So basically, a subprime auto loan is a type of loan used to finance a car purchase that's offered to people with low credit scores or limited credit histories. So you go to a dealer, you want to buy a new car, you ask for a loan, and because you don't have all the money or you don't want to spend all the money in cash to buy this car, and you ask for a loan. But the point is that there are also those so-called subprime loans. Subprime loans carry higher interest rates than comparable prime loans and may also come with prepayment penalties if the borrower chooses to pay off the loan earlier. However, the so-called subprime borrowers may have no other avenue for purchasing an automobile. So they are often willing to pay the higher fees and rates associated with this type of loans. Here you can find some example of the subprime auto loan rates. I would say that in this case, there is no official cutoff score for the subprime versus prime status. But usually the borrower's credit rating has to fall below the score of 650. It's the so-called FICO score. So it ranges between, the FICO usually ranges between 300 and 850. So the subprime is usually below the 650 and above 450 to be considered in that case subprime. In general, fewer than 20% of the American fall below the 600 score. 22% fall between 600 and 700, and 22% are at 800 or above. There is no official, as I say, the subprime credit score. Interest rate will vary among lenders, and of course depend on the type of vehicle. New vehicle and used vehicle has different interest rates, as you can see. Here are the typical interest rates one can expect when shopping for an average 60-month auto loan to buy a new or used vehicle as of September 2019. As you can see, the rate jumps dramatically between borrowers with acceptance credit scores and those with subprime rates. You see that the rate can go up to more or less 18% for the new car loan and more or less up to 15% for the used car loan. The actual situation. There is a growing, let's say, concern about this type of loan because, as you can see, let's say that the subprime auto loan became a big business following the monetary expansion of 2001-2004. So low interest rate from the central banks mean easier way to access to this type of loans for the customers. You can remember in the 2019 there was the great financial crisis where the subprime mortgages and other forms of lending of to higher risk, let's say, individuals were provided. Financial institutions were so flush with money that they sought out the higher returns that could be had from charging higher interest rates to the subprime borrowers. The term subprime actually was popularized by the media a little bit later, during the subprime mortgages crisis, as I say, between 2007 and 2008. So again, in this chart, you can see that the non-housing debt balance is growing from the levels of 2004, 2005 to those levels of the end of the first quarter, of 2018. In the specific, you can recognize the auto loan by the green color. And this type of loan is basically one of the biggest increase in these all of these non-housing debt. So the two main issues in the non-housing debt are basically student loan and auto loan. The growing delinquencies. What is the delinquency? The delinquency is the rate of the customers, of the borrowers that cannot afford to pay that are not able to pay anymore this type of lending. So there is usually the rate can range between 2% and 5%. You can see from this chart that was provided by the New York Federal Reserve that we had a peak of 5.27% in the Q4 of 2010, right after the great financial crisis. That means crisis means that people lose job. That means that people have more difficulties in repaying those loans. So we had a peak during the great financial crisis. And what's happening again is that we are reaching again another peak. As you can see from this chart, we have reached in Q1 of 2020 more than 5% of delinquencies, which means 68 billion of US dollars in terms of total auto loans debt. Why is it worrying? Because there is a correlation, a very strange correlation, because the last decade in US saw one of the biggest expansion in terms of GDP and in terms of very low unemployment. This is a chart provided by the Financial Times with data from JP Morgan. The blue line is the US unemployment rate. So it was going down very fast during this decade. We reached a level which was lower than 3.5%. But instead, the subprime auto debt was growing a lot. We started from 8% in 2011, and we reached more than 14%. Those indicated here are subprime auto asset-backed securities. Asset-backed securities is a type of loan which has an asset as a guarantee. In this case, the asset for the subprime auto is the car itself. And then those debts are, let's say, securitized, so they are packaged, and the bank, the financial institution that owns it, resell it to other banks in order to spread the risk. So the point is that even though unemployment was going down during this decade, we still have a lot of subprime auto loans, thanks probably to the low interest rate. Instead, the prime auto loans, the yellow one in this chart, were very stable. So that is a thing that could worry us. The conclusions. Final part. Okay. Why is it worrying? The point is that there is a very as we saw in this page, there is a correlation between low unemployment and higher subprime rates. But what happens if unemployment will go up? This is a chart of initial jobless claims in US, and there are the peaks during the crisis usually. So you see the dot-com bubble, the great financial crisis, but look what happened in 2020. It's unprecedented. It's something that never happened before. A lot of people are declaring that now they have no more the job, they are unemployed. And so this is a very worrying thing, because we saw before that even though the unemployment was very low until the end of 2019, we still saw many mortgages for the auto market. But the situation could be in danger and could be very worrying because of this issue of unemployed people. So more unemployed people means more people without job, means more people that are in difficulty to repay these payments. So what we can do with this issue? Of course, central bank can help a lot, because the stimulus they have provided during starting from, let's say, the beginning of this crisis is very huge. It's also unprecedented. So unprecedented unemployment, unprecedented measure from the major central banks of the world. You see the blue, dark blue is the Federal Reserve, the light blue is the European Central Bank, the Bank of Japan. So every major central bank is trying to help the financial system. Of course, those stimulus are not going only for the auto loans, but are going to the financial system in order to make it more resilient, more adaptive, and more ready for this crisis. So, luckily enough, we have those demiurges, which are those beautiful faces we can see here from the major central bank governors. Of course, this is a little bit a joke. They are not gods, so we don't have to just wait for them to give the helicopter money to everyone. Of course, there should be, let's say, an homogeneous and a global, let's say, agreement in which every stakeholder plays his part. So the car maker, the client, the financial institution, the European, all the central banks are aligned, and they look at those KPIs. For example, the one we saw before in the chart of which subprime auto loans were going up, and they should find new measures in order to take this issue under the control. So no worry, guys, we are not in another bubble, but we should keep to watching, let's say, those KPIs. Thank you for your time and for all these beautiful people participating to this webinar. If you have any questions, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nicolò. I will say that the last charts was stunning, incredible, really, and probably we have a lot of questions about this presentation. So I saw a question from Matteo that I have a question once Nicolò, and thanks. So Matteo, I will unmute. Okay, can you hear us?
No, we cannot hear Matteo.
Yeah, if Matteo, maybe I can go by myself and then we'll go Matteo. I have a question.
Yeah.
Which similarities and which aspect you can understand from this crisis, similar crisis, let's say potential crisis, as you mentioned at the end, similar to the ones of the subprime loan about the house market in 2007 or 2008? Which are the most similar aspects?
Yeah, very good question. Of course, I would say that we come from a period of decade again of very low interest rates. Even though there was no, let's say, issues on the economic point of view, so no crisis during the last, let's say, 10 years in US, I'm talking about US specifically, the interest rates still were very, very low. And this, of course, incentivizes the dealers, the financial institutions, Santander Bank, all those banks, Chrysler Bank, that are providing consumer financing for the auto loans to give the loans even to people that cannot afford it. Okay, so this is a common point from my side. Another thing is that the ABS, you know, the asset-backed security. So the way to this form of scrutinizing, of securitizing, sorry, those loans, package them and sell to other institutions. It was something that was done before with the subprime mortgage crisis, of course. And the point is that per se is not something dangerous. I mean, it's a way to share the risk. But then, if a bubble, if the bubble bursts, that becomes a bomb, because you share all these things with other shareholders. Okay, so that could be the issue. But I think differently from 2009, we learned something. Maybe that's my hope.
Yes, let's hope together. So I just saw Ivan question. Ivan, can you hear us?
Activating. Okay, the microphone
Yeah,
should be.
it's okay.
Okay. Ciao.
Yeah.
Ciao, Ivan.
And what I wanted to ask is to have an assessment concerning the dimension, the financial dimension of this phenomenon. I saw on the graph, the one showing that unemployment decreasing while the total amount of money included in the subprime loans was even increasing. So what I wanted to ask is compared to the financial dimension of subprime housing, how does this relate to? Is this similar? Is this lower, like an half? Is this the double? How much impact, how much mass has this financial mass in
But you want me to compare the dimension of the subprime auto loans of today with the previous mortgage crisis of 2009?
Yes, yes. To understand how big can be this trigger, maybe if you have
the question is, let's say, an improvement of the one who was asked from Simone, more or less. I mean, the dimensions are big because, as you can see here, we are talking about 1.3 trillion of US dollars. The total auto debt in US, only in US. I found that there was a similar issue also in UK, probably, because the consumer behavior is very similar. Of course, it's big, but let's say forecasting how big it will be if it bursts, it's very difficult. I would say that differently from the mortgage crisis of 2009, we are still talking about cars and not talking about housing. So if you lose your car because you cannot afford to pay it, at least you have a home. That's my point. In that case, many people lost their houses and they didn't have the place where to sleep. I don't know if you know what I mean. But of course, we're still talking about very big stakeholders involved. So the big three of Detroit, the big banks of US, and there is an issue also. The issue I see is that a bubble like this can burst is dangerous for the whole automotive market, not only for the new cars but also for the used cars. Because if you realize that you sold a lot of cars to people who cannot afford, the market was in some way, let's say, unreal. I mean, and then you realize that many people who bought the car last year will have to put the car back to the dealer this year. That means the dealer has a lot of stock that implies a decreasing in the value of the cars used, but also in the value of the new cars, because people will not buy any more new car because they will not provide any more financing to those prime clients and so on and so forth. So it's dangerous, but I think it will not be as big as the subprime mortgage.
Okay, thank you for the...
Nicolò, sorry if I interrupt you. I think also in next events it could be useful to introduce Nas, because he's living in Dubai, as I know, and I work in Dubai, and I know that there's a really great bubble related to the mortgages of house and also the car. So I think if he's able to listen us, just a quick review of these topics also in the next events can be useful.
Yeah, sure. Nas,
can you? Yeah, let's try to unmute him.
I cannot see the questions because I'm presenting. So
yeah.
Can you please read me?
Nas is something related also to Dubai area.
Yeah, am I here? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, true. In Dubai, people get cars like it's nothing. For some reason, like it's super common to get loans here. I mean, I got here and they offered me a balance on my credit card of like 15,000 euros. And I'm like, really? Are you sure you want to give this to me? It's so weird, but they treat loans like it's nothing. And that's because the economy has been in such great shape for so many times, so many years. But now in the last couple of years, things are actually taking a downturn. And now with coronavirus, things are becoming a little bit worse. So it's interesting to see how things are going to turn out. But Nicolò, really good presentation. I really like your presentation. I wonder if the auto loan size is 1.3 trillion in the US. How big was the housing one? Is it 10 trillion, 5 trillion?
I have to check. I don't know, honestly.
Just to see, because you mentioned it's not going to be as big as the 2008 bubble, but can it get close to that? Like, can it become a bubble? Because people get cars like like it's nothing. Especially in Dubai, I see it, but in the US as well.
Yeah, yes, good point. If someone can check also in real time the data of the amount of debt of
in the meantime we will check. Now, so related to the point that you are speaking, I remember I was in January in Dubai at this cemetery of cars, like Lamborghini, Ferrari, you know what I mean, and it's the fact that a lot of people failed in Dubai. A lot of companies failed in Dubai, and there's thousands of cars in this condition.
Because gasoline here or gas is very cheap.
Yes,
they produce it right here. I can see from my building. I can see where they produce oil and where they transform it into like gasoline. So it's super cheap. So the people think, why would I get a bus or a metro when I can just drive everywhere, right? So people prefer to get cars left, right, and center.
Yeah, it was the same point when I was working in Riyadh. You know, Riyadh, the same of Dubai, the same price of, if in Europe you can find the cars with 1,000 of cylinder rate. I don't know if it's right, the engine, but if you go to Dubai, you have V6, you have Toyota, you have great car, but giant car that are really expensive from a gasoline point of view.
True. And then there's tax, right? You don't pay tax.
Yeah. Free zone. You know, free zone.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, so, I found the data. More or less, the housing debt is usually on average 4 times the non-housing debt. So if you are talking about here in 2019, 4 trillion total non-housing debt, I would guess more or less we will have 16 trillion of housing debt, okay? That's to give you an idea of the dimension. Roughly, that's the point. So the non-housing debt is still very, very not significant compared to the housing debt. But again, another issue could be, another interesting topic to analyze could be the student loan. Because
in England, in US, in particular.
An MBA degree today is worth less probably than yesterday, but people are still paying loan for MBA that they did yesterday, 2 years ago.
Nicolò, I just see a question from Benedetta. Probably was typing. I don't know if it's a question or will say something. Yes, this point, Nas, in the next event, I want to introduce you maybe with an overview of the Gulf, of the MENA region. And we was in search about this vision, and probably you will be our guest, I think.
Amazing.
So, thank you for... okay. Thank you so much, Benedetta. And I think this point will be discussed again, because the topic is huge, but Nicolò shared a point that can be really tough, can be really a topic for the future. So I'm really glad to have this topic with all of you. Thank you, Nicolò. Thank you, Nina, and thank you, particularly also Matteo. And for today, if there are no other questions, I think we can close. But I invite you all of you to go to the LinkedIn page. I will send here the code, the link, and we will find in another call for sure. Next week on Friday, we usually have the same call with other guests, other topics. So.
Yes, I can see the link.
Thank you so much, guys.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Ciao. Bye. Bye.
Ciao, bye.